All right, let's go.
Question of the week is, we have a habit, by the way, of asking question of the weeks where we don't know the answer to the question. And so it's
Right.
because I just pick these questions just to basically hear Greg shrug his shoulders and say, I don't know. So I
Right.
got I got
That's my standard answer.
I got another
No?
one of those for you this week, but I thought it was interesting because I'd like to know your strategy. So
All
Joshua
right.
in our frequent miler insiders said, I haven't, or not I said, have an Amex financial review phone date on Friday. It's the second one for my wife. The first one was 7 years ago. They wanted tax forms sent in and it was easy. This time I asked the guy if I could just send the forms in again. And he said, no, we might not even need the forms, but want to ask some questions about some of the account activity. Then he told me that my wife couldn't authorize me to speak on her behalf. She has to do the call herself. I'm quite
Oh,
comfortable on these calls, but she's not. And he want to
yeah.
have ideas about what she can expect to be asked or what the best answers are when they ask why a teacher is spending so much.
Oh, oh, wow.
So,
Sounds
so
like sounds like someone's doing a little manufactured spending with
it
her Amex card.
sounds that way.
Yeah.
So I guess first of all, what do you know, or what do you think somebody could reasonably expect from a financial review call? What would be your strategy? That's really what I'm interested in. What would be your strategy in terms of answering those questions, like why and how are you spending so much money? You don't have that kind of a salary written. I mean, and
Right.
that's a question that you could be
So,
asked presumably at some point, right? I mean, so
yeah. So, in the past, I've always said, like, in most cases, it pays to just be completely honest about what you're doing. But in this case, what I would do is I wouldn't lie about anything. But what I would do is focus all my answers on not what I'm doing or why, but rather um, why I know I can pay, why I'm not going to go default on these charges, right? That we have all this savings over here, or and if that's not true, if you don't have like savings to cover like the spend so that you can show that you're good for it, then that could be pretty risky. But assuming you have like you know some accounts that you'd be willing to share with them the balances of and say, look, I've got all this, and so I'm comfortable that I can keep up this level of spend, and I never have to worry about whether or not I can pay it back, or maybe not a bank account, but some sort of income that you have that that you could show that money's constantly coming in. That's enough to cover these things. That's what I would focus on, and try to basically dodge the specifics of what I'm buying, assuming what they're buying is gift cards or some other financial equivalent that is explicitly not allowed by Amex. But if it comes down to that's not enough, I would tell the truth, because I think then you're more likely to have points clawed back rather than have your account shut down. Um,
that makes
yeah.
sense. That makes. I knew you would. Your honesty is the best policy kind of person. So I knew you wouldn't advise lying about it. But I was curious what you would say to do because, yeah, I mean it's a tough situation to be in if you're spending more than you theoretically should be spending. But I think that's as good a strategy as any, explaining why you can afford to do it and how you can afford to pay it back, and you're not a default risk. Because I mean, really, at the end of the day, that's the risk that the bank is trying to assess, right? Are you
Right.
gonna are you
That's what
gonna
for the
run away?
financial review they're worrying about. They're not the rat team that's trying to catch you for manufactured spending.
Right. Right.
But you want to sort of avoid them handing you off to the rat team. And so
Right. Exactly.
make them feel good that you're not going to default, and you'll probably get through it.
That's a good point because that's what the financial review is all about, to make sure that you don't default. And that person is probably not as well versed and or as concerned
Maybe
with,
not. Right.
maybe not anyway, as well,
Right.
much concern. Now, the other interesting piece there was he said that he was told that he wouldn't be able to talk on behalf of his wife. And that's something that maybe some readers don't know that is often an option. So I thought that was also worth addressing quickly, that that's something that, have you found in your experience that many issuers will allow for you to, for example, for you to talk on behalf of your wife, or wife to talk on behalf of your son, to be able to talk on behalf of somebody else? Is that something that's usually an option?
Uh, so a lot of people do that routinely, where they'll have their spouse call and say, "I'm going to hand you over to my spouse to because I want them," and people tell me all the time that's what they do routinely. I've tried it a couple times and it didn't really work out that way. Like the people on the phone kept talking to my wife and she was mad at me because I promised her that she wouldn't have to talk, and they made it harder on her. And I'm sure there were some magic words that she could have used to hand the phone over, but I kind of burned that path,
A long time ago.
So yeah, so that's a problem, if you have a spouse like I do who doesn't like and will do anything they can to avoid being on the phone with banks and this type of thing, especially because she doesn't know, anything about this stuff, and so doesn't really know, you know, why we're doing what we're doing on the card. It would be very uncomfortable for her, and so I feel for, you said Josh, I think.
Yeah.
I feel for him because, or his wife, because I know that, in my case, my spouse would be very mad at me if she was forced to do a call like that. And,
Yeah,
wow.
yeah. So I mean, it's worth keeping those risks in mind when you're, engaging in activity that might draw that kind of a phone call, I guess. But also good to know what some of the options are, and some of the strategies. Anyway, many people have made it through financial reviews just fine. Sometimes that kind of call, from my understanding, can be actually relatively easy. It's not always the big intimidating thing that people make it out to be. Now, if you're spending a lot more than you quote unquote should be for wherever they see your income and means, then certainly it's possible it may be a more challenging call, but it's worth answering. And I think, like Greg said, honesty is typically the best policy. So
Yeah.
best of luck to you and anybody else in that kind of a situation. So
Right. And just one last thing, of course, Josh's wife has the option of changing her name to Josh, and then Josh should be able to do the call without lying about it or anything.
You guys will be all set there.
Yeah. Yeah.